Cringy jokes aside, I am extremely happy I got my hands on this game in late March with its Japanese release. Now, I've been following the Hyperdimension Neptunia brand for many, many years now, and I've played the whole mainline series and quite a few of the spin-offs. And the same can be said of the Senran Kagura series as well, though I definitely skipped Reflections. Anyway, this is Sho, and for today, we're going to jump into the Neptunia Senran Kagura crossover game, Ninja Wars. Originally released in the autumn of 2021, Neptunia Senran Kagura Ninja Wars is a crossover action game between the two titular franchises. Well, we can get into the long history about these two games, but the short and sweet is that Neptunia was developed by Compile Heart and Idea Factory, which are creators of many cutesy anime waifu games such as Mary Skelter or Dead's End Request. The general concept of Neptunia is to have all of video gaming anthropomorphized as extremely cute girls. The series itself is known for not taking itself too seriously, and regularly breaks the fourth wall with some really good localization and really good knee slappers. Some critics feel it's a bit too fan servicey, and I can get that, but I feel that compared to other series, it's actually really tame. On the opposite side, Senran Kagura was developed by Marvelous and Tamsoft, which is a bit more unique. Tamsoft has a reputation of making cheapo discount games mostly centered around Japanese releases. However, if you are familiar with Onechambara or Utaware du Mon Zan, then you've enjoyed a Tamsoft game. Marvelous is more than likely better known for games like Popo Lacroix, Rune Factory, and Demon X Machina, which are themed to be anime heavy and are much more serious in tone. For Senran Kagura itself, we follow a bunch of cute anime ninja girls as they fight each other and lose their clothes after taking enough damage. Yeah, that's actually what happens. Fun fact, I actually was playing the first 3DS release of this game when I was first dating my wife. So, she's a keeper. Anyway, the series, despite its absurdity, tends to take itself quite more seriously and actually has, I would say, a fairly absolute compelling story, which is worth checking out. Now, as for our crossover here, we have a more tame experience. There's plenty of Neptunia fourth wall breaks and humor, however the game gets a bit more serious at certain points. The general premise is that the ladies of Senran and Neptunia belong to two distinct ninja schools that are in conflict with each other. One day, out of nowhere, a bunch of machine robot ninjas show up, and an evil red-headed warrior woman named Yol takes responsibility and tries to lay waste to everyone. Again, typical shenanigans, but nothing too crazy or out of line for a Neptunia game. I personally found it fairly charming, as it blends the themes and styles of both games quite nicely. Now, I would be remiss to not talk about the Sony censorship system. So, this game got a lot of smack from fans as it was revealed that the devs may have made some adjustments to the game's presentation, specifically the removal of the clothes loss mechanics from the original Senran Kagura series. The Switch version is an exact port of the PS4 release. Therefore, those initial design changes follow through into the Switch version. So, there is no non-censored version, even in Japan. With that said, let's talk about the audio, visuals, and performance. Audio-wise, I can't complain. Neptunia and Senran aren't really known for their music, but I admit there are some fun tracks that really hit that wacky feel, while dropping some great bangers for the missions and fights. Not to mention, the voiceover work is absolutely fantastic in the Japanese version. Again, the actresses and actors that take care of their roles just absolutely nail it. Visuals themselves are fairly nice with the visual novel art direction. I do admit I'm a big fan of the anime art style, but in-game expect visuals to get grainy with some asset clippings and other visual issues. It personally didn't kill the experience, however the game does have a noticeable downscale with visual fidelity, so this is likely due to the lowering the pressure on the actual performance. Speaking of performance, the game actually plays fairly well. There were a handful of times when the frames were less than desirable, however in principle it flows much better than most of the newer Koei Tecmo Muso and Empires games, so you can rely on a stable performance as you progress through stages. With that said, the game does have a more clunky design feel. I spoke about this with my first impressions video, however the gameplay seems heavily based on the Action Unleashed style of game. Now that is to say, it functions as a typical Senran Kagura, or other likewise action game, but movement feels extremely slow and clunky. For instance, running requires the use of your energy bar, and you'll need to hold down a button to move quickly from one zone to another while running. This isn't this isn't really exclusive to performance per se. Rather, it is the nature of the game's design itself. So don't expect a free-form, fast-paced Musou action game, at least when going through your mission objectives. In principle, Ninja Wars plays like a typical Musou Warriors-like game, but just feels slower. All of the hallmark points of this genre are included, such as normal attack combos, jumps and air attacks, dodge rolling, superpowered ninjutsu Musou attacks. An important point to note is that the X button replaces the traditional power attack with a ranged shuriken or kunai, which helps keep damage up while providing some defensive movement. You can hold up to 5 at a time, which after exhausted has a short cooldown period. You also have access to 2 special skill wheels, which provide access to your special skills and your elemental empowerments. Your skill wheel allows you to spam specialized skill attacks as long as you have the required energy bars, which charge over time and as you land attacks. Skills can also be chained if used in a particular order, allowing for a tremendous boost of damage. This also increases your sort of limit break gauge that allows for you to use your superpower ninjutsu move. Do note that more skills can be unlocked as your girls level up, allowing for more customization and stylish options to defeat your enemies. Your elemental empowerment wheel allows for your character to transform into an elemental stance, which imbues your attack with said element. Now this is critical for some bosses and sub-boss monsters, as you will deal little to no damage without matching the element of their weakness, so it's important to keep that in mind. You can also use this only a handful of times per mission. I think it's up to 5. Consumable items, such as potions, recovery items, or attack items, are available by pressing the up directional button. You can find these during your missions or purchase them when you're back at your base, and you can use them as much as you want throughout any mission you play. Also, missions themselves are played as teams. So for this reason, you can select one other girl to join you as you fight, which brings her own set of skills to help out. Now, on a positive note, each of the casts has a very unique feel with characters, such as Neptune and Noir being more AoE strikers, and others such as Vert and Hanmura being more single burst DPS with their speed. Comboing between the girls is a bit limited, but you can swap between the girls with a down directional button. Aside from this, there's not much else to discuss during an actual mission, which brings us over to what you can do outside of missions, which I suppose is fairly typical and straightforward in a Warriors-like game. You can equip charms to boost stats, you can check your tools and your items, you can set your skills, you can equip special kunai and shurikens that can cause stat effects, you can change your costumes, as this game does come with all previous DLC, though I do feel that the costumes are a little bit lackluster. They're just mostly white sprite swaps. The game also has a Spirit Gem Bead stat boost socketing system, where you use Spirit Gems on a board to boost your stats. Do note that certain combinations of gems allow for you to gain extra boosts of power, so it's definitely worth an exploration or two. You'll also be able to synthesize new gems as you progress through the game. Shops are also available for restocking items, getting new kunai and spirit gems, the usual. Iffy runs the Shrine, which allows you to do special missions for extra items and training, and it also has all of the gallery options. So if you want to recap some story beats you missed, or just enjoy the music, you're more than welcome to. The communication system from Neptunia is also back, allowing you to talk with NPCs and your partners for special personal events that flesh out the story, providing items, more CGs to unlock, or sometimes even unlocking new missions at Iffy's Shrine. For the late game, you have the Yomi training, which is essentially challenge mode missions for the late game. And finally, you have the Peaches and Cream meditation minigame, which has you balance your chosen ninja on a giant peach. Being successful awards a temporary buff for one stage, and sometimes you get some extra items. So it's not too bad if you're having trouble on a certain stage and you want to do some extra preparation. And that's it. Nothing too big or out of the ordinary for a Warrior-style game. I would say that the systems of this game are fairly simple and straightforward for newer players to the genre, with the late game content being an absolute hair puller. So for veterans, that's probably where you're going to want to be. So I'll keep this succinct and concise as possible. Typical of a Warriors game, you have difficulty modes that you can select. In this case, only 3, the usual easy, normal, and hard modes. For me, you know the drill, it's normal mode. From the get-go, each stage has a general recommended level, which definitely plays into the challenge. On normal mode, at least at first, I didn't come across anything that really hurt. The first boss was a bit challenging, but then again, I just sort of went ham and attacked him with reckless abandon, so that's probably just on me. I do admit though, as the stage level increased, things did get a little bit more challenging was a welcome feel. Typically, you were given new enemy types, which had to adjust my approach on how I was attacking, as well as having more enemies spawn at single times, which definitely made me more cautious on not being surrounded. When I checked out the hardest mode, the major differences were 2 points. First, more health points. Second, damage numbers. Now, I think there were some cases where my attacks did a bit less, but I didn't really feel that I was doing less damage. I just felt that the enemies were more spongy. And on top of that, their simple attacks were doing more damage to me than before. So if you're going to go through hard mode, I would highly recommend keeping a healthy stock of healing items just to be safe. Otherwise, the AI and combat skills remain fairly straightforward as you progress through the game, no matter on what mode you're running. This offers a level challenge for those looking to keep the grind very minimal, and if in the event you do need to grind, the game is very open and free on how to do that. So you really shouldn't spend too much time in this game trying to catch up with numbers. Quick advice on the items. Charms, accessories, and kunai shuriken cannot be shared between the girls. So what I mean to say is, if you have one, then only one can be equipped at a single girl at one moment. Whereas spirit gems are split between the party as a whole. So if you get 3 attack up gems, all ladies can use those gems on their spirit boards. Just keep that in mind when working on your prep. It makes things a lot cheaper and easier. Now, as for the OP, I'm not really a big fan of the ice ladies in these sort of games, but Blanc is an absolute beast with her skill set. She hits like a freight train, and her skills allow for defense down debuffs, making her cut through enemies like butter. Later on, once you unlock Yumi, oh gosh, they just pair so well as ice princesses. You can stun lock and debuff the ever-living life out of anything in your way. I'd highly suggest working on these two as soon as possible. Blank should be available from the get-go. Yumi will show up a few chapters in, around the end of chapter 3 or so. Finally, and this is more of a gameplay tip, swap your ladies often during missions, especially when they're damaged. They will recover lost HP over time if swapped out. Plus, the active shinobi gets more XP per kill, which can help if you gotta get a few extra levels before the end of the mission. Those looking for a familiar Neptunia game may have a jarring experience dealing with the Senran Kagura style of gameplay, given that you missed out on Action Unleashed, of course. However, if you get past that, the game itself is a fairly solid port that will provide hours of enjoyment for fans of either series. For newcomers without much experience with these games, I would say it's an easy ease into the mechanics, and you'll pick up on things really quickly, being well prepared for that increase in difficulty that will come over time. For veterans, I would say it's not an amazing challenge early on. However, the later endgame content is just enough frustration to really get the juices flowing. Alright, well if you made it here, thank you so much for watching the video. This was a release I was stoked to play, and I hope this video provided some good, clear information on the game. So, if you found this video helpful, or if you enjoyed the content, please leave a like and comment. I would be very curious to know your history with Neptunia or Senran Kagura if you have. Personally, for myself, I would love to see the other Neptunia games make a Switch port. You know, the first 3 rather than just the 4th one. Also, if you really want to support the channel, the best way to send your love would be by subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. So, thank you so much for sending your love. As always, this is Sho, and remember, if the going gets tough, let's switch strats. Cheers!